return part 2, then you'll call it a 5-part song form. So that fourth section, in order to call it enlarged 3-part song form, it has to be in the same key, and it can be slightly embellished. So what's listed as the second criteria here on the second page of 5-part song form, it says part 4 is a substantial modification of part 2. Well, then that's a judgment call, and is, your opinion on whether it's modified enough that you're going to say, well, yeah, that really forms a separate part. So that there's an element of ambiguity there. But that's the basic idea. And so if you have this situation, let's say you have a part 1, let's say that that's repeated, and then you have a part 2, and then you have a part 3 that brings back the opening. And let's say this cadence is on a half cadence, this cadence is authentic cadence, and then this is written out, and it's very similar. It's not different enough that you're going to call these different versions of B, and then something like that. Then this would be an example of enlarged. Three-part song form. And so, if this, however, is in a different key, then that transposition and that return of this material would make this into a part 4. So, this would be part 1, this would be part 2. Always remember that part 1 and part 3 are the same, especially the beginning of it is the same key, same theme. That's one of the most important things just to have straight in, understanding the basic pattern of song forms. And then this, if it's a new key, you call it part 4. And then, just like part 3 is a return of the opening part there, same with part 5. It's going to be the same idea that comes back. So these are bigger, and they can have connecting passages, transitions or retransitions, or they can have little codetas at the end, or simple introductions. Usually they're not going to have like a independent introduction, but we're going to see one in a minute that has a little 2-measure spinning figure that starts with a simple introduction. But this is the situation with this material coming back, but it's in a new key. So that will be a part 4. So if this is completely different material, so let's say we have that, C and C prime, then that would be obviously a part 4. And so it's just in the case where this comes back and you feel like it's changed so much that you want to call it a part 4. Anyway, this is the basic pattern for a 5-part song form. So we're going to look at a couple of examples of that next. So if you look, just the final thing here on this handout on the second page, I just, just to reiterate one final time, parts 1, 3, and 5 share the same thematic material and are in tonic key at the beginning of it. And that very often 5-part song forms make use of auxiliary members, but you don't use the term enlarged. So only use that for 3-part song forms. So you can use Enlarged for 2-part, expanded is what's in the textbook, but you could use Enlarged too, or even extended. But at any rate, don't use that term Enlarged for 5-part song forms. And just remember that if you have the use of double bars, that's always going to indicate the end of a part. Okay, so that's our basic rule of thumb with that. All right, so what we're going to do now is to look at a couple of examples of 5-part song forms. So the first one is pretty straightforward, and it is one that is by Frédéric Chopin, and it is a mazurka, which is a Polish dance. They're triple meter, different types of mazurkas. This is one that's a very fast tempo. And so if you will go to the website and then go to handouts and scores and slide down to song forms and then slide to the right and go down to song forms scores, then you'll see that as the top example, and click on that file to open it up. And so what I want to do, I want to have you just look at this for the next video, because you need to get some practice trying to analyze these yourself. And so you see here that you've got 12 measures that are then concluded with double bars at the end of the fourth system. And then you've got another about 20 measures or so to the bottom of that page that are enclosed with double bars and repeats. And then at the top of page 62, you have another section that's enclosed with double bars and repeats, and you have a first and second ending there at the end. And so I want you to analyze this example, and I already mentioned it's a 5-part song form, but you want to indicate each part and what you have as far as the phrase construction. So one point that I want to make here, and just a hint, is that at the end of the first phrase, that in the measure that's marked in measure 4, scherzando, you see that that is sequenced then in measure 5 and in measure 6. That is an extension of the end of that first phrase, and is using that technique that I described as disillusion. So if you remember, disillusion is that technique that extends the end of a phrase by repeating or sequencing the material from the end of the phrase. So usually it's extending by 1 or 2 or 3 measures. In this case, it's a 2-measure extension. So that would be included in the first phrase. So the first phrase is going to be 6 measures long. And then the second phrase would start on the second measure of the second line. So with that in mind, that is going to be something that is going to apply, actually, although it's not disillusion, but he's going to use that same figure or motive, because I guess it's kind of developed in this. And that would be in the third and fourth measures of the second phrase. So you see that same scherzando motive, that little idea. You've got extra 2 measures there. And so the first part is just a contrasting period. It's 2 6-measure phrases. So with that in mind, see if you can, the rest of it is not tricky really, and we'll talk about that next time, and be sure that you listen to it. This one, if you go to the listening examples tab and slide down to song forms and click on that, then you will see that we've got that. It's like the fifth one or fourth one, so 1, 2, 3, fifth one down, no, sixth one down. And this particular recording, it starts like it's in a second, 12. So it's like there's like 12 seconds of silence before it starts. So yeah, be aware of that. All right, and then the other one that I want you to look at is the one that is entitled Spinning Song. And so if you'll go back to the home page and then go to handouts and scores and then song forms, and then slide across to song form scores and click on that, then you'll see this second example. And what I want you to do with this one is just to listen to it and to try to identify the return of the opening material. You'll be able to do that hearing it, just once. And this one's a little trickier. It's real fast. And so if you'll just listen to it and kind of get a feeling for the return of the opening material, which then is going to indicate parts 3 and then part 5, if that fourth section is a return of part 2. So that's always what you're looking for in these that look like they're 5 sections like that. And on this particular score, it says there starts on page 8 of 18. So you want to, when you click on the file, if you go, you'll see on the top, toolbar there, it says 1 out of 18 on the first page. So go to where it says 8 out of 18. And it's at the top of that page. And it says number 34. So the opus number is opus 67, number 4. So I want you to listen to this, identify the return of the opening, and then we'll talk about this in the next video. All right.